Let me tell you a story about loneliness. Not the kind you feel for a day or two, but the kind that settles into your bones over years until you forget what warmth feels like. His name was David Coleman. If you lived in London, you probably knew that name. It was printed on buildings across the city, whispered in boardrooms, and splashed across business magazines. David was a property developer, one of the richest men in England. His company had built half the luxury apartments you see glittering along the Thames. He had everything money could buy: a mansion in Knightsbridge worth millions, cars that cost more than most people's houses, and respect from everyone who crossed his path. But here's what those magazines never told you. David spent every Christmas alone. It wasn't always like this. Once long ago, he had a family. A mother who baked mince pies that filled the house with cinnamon and love. A father who taught him to ice skate in Hyde Park every winter. But life has a cruel way of taking what matters most. His parents died in an accident when he was 22, just as he was starting university. Suddenly, he was alone with a failing family business and a choice to make. He could crumble, or he could build walls around his heart and fight. He chose to fight. And fight he did. By 30, he had turned the business into an empire. By 40, he had more money than he could spend in 3 lifetimes. But somewhere along the way, he forgot how to let people in. Every relationship felt like a transaction. Every friendship seemed to want something from him. So he stopped trying. He built his life like one of his buildings, strong, impressive, but cold. On this particular Christmas Eve, the 23rd he would spend alone, David sat in his study nursing a glass of whiskey. The mansion around him was decorated, of course. His staff had hung wreaths and set up a massive tree in the entrance hall. But it all felt empty, like a hotel lobby, beautiful but lifeless. His employees had left hours ago, rushing home to their families. His business partner James had called earlier, inviting him to a dinner party. David had declined with the same polite excuse he used every year. Work to finish. Another time, perhaps. The lies came easily now. He was about to pour another drink when he heard a soft knock on the study door. He looked up, surprised. Everyone should have gone home by now. "Come in," he called out. The door opened slowly, and there stood Lily Hart, the housekeeper who had started working for him 6 months ago. She was young, maybe late 20s, with kind eyes and a nervousness that never quite left her when she spoke to him. She stood in the doorway, twisting her hands together like she was trying to find courage. "Mr. Coleman, I'm sorry to disturb you," she said quietly. "I was just leaving, and I wanted to ask you something." David leaned back in his chair, studying her. "What is it, Lily?" She took a breath. "Will you be spending tonight alone, sir?" The question caught him off guard. In all his years, no employee had ever asked him something so personal. He almost gave her his standard brush-off, but something in her eyes stopped him. There was no pity there, just genuine concern. "I have work to finish," he said, his voice softer than he intended. "The quiet helps." Lily nodded slowly, but she didn't leave. Instead, she did something that shocked him to his core. She stepped forward and placed a piece of paper on his desk. "I know this might sound strange," she said, her words tumbling out quickly as if she was afraid she'd lose her nerve. "But I'm making dinner tonight at my flat. Nothing fancy, just a proper Christmas meal. And I thought maybe you'd like to join me. No one should spend Christmas alone." David stared at her, speechless. In his world, people didn't invite billionaires to modest flats in ordinary neighborhoods. People courted his favor at expensive restaurants, at charity galas where photographers captured every moment. But this simple invitation offered with trembling hands, this was something entirely different. "That's kind of you," he finally managed, "but that wouldn't be appropriate." "I don't have family here either," Lily said softly, her eyes dropping to the floor. "I moved from Ireland 8 months ago after my grandmother passed. She raised me. I thought London would give me a fresh start, but the truth is, I'll be alone tonight too. So if you change your mind, the address is there. Flat 12, Willow Street in Hackney. It's the building with the red door and the window boxes." Before he could respond, she was gone, closing the door gently behind her. David sat frozen, staring at the paper with her handwritten address. The clock on his desk ticked loudly in the silence. Outside, London glittered with Christmas lights, families gathering, children laughing, life happening everywhere except in this cold, beautiful house. He picked up the address and read it again. Willow Street, Hackney. It might as well have been on another planet. What was he thinking, even considering this? A man in his position didn't visit employees' homes. The press would have a field day. His business associates would whisper. It was absurd. But as he sat there in his study, surrounded by expensive furniture and impressive artwork, David realized something that terrified him. He didn't want to spend another Christmas alone. Not this year. Not anymore. The walls he had built so carefully were starting to crack, and for the first time in 20 years, he wanted to let them fall. For 2 hours, David tried to convince himself to stay home. He poured another whiskey, opened his laptop, pretended to review contracts. But the words blurred on the screen. All he could think about was that piece of paper sitting on his desk, and the look in Lily's eyes when she invited him. She had looked hopeful, and afraid, and kind. So impossibly kind. At 8:30, he stood up. His heart was pounding like he was about to walk into the most important business meeting of his life. But this wasn't business. This was something far more dangerous. This was real. He didn't change out of his suit, didn't call his driver. Instead, he grabbed his car keys and walked to the garage himself. His security guard nearly dropped his coffee when David said he was driving himself out for the evening. "Sir, are you sure? The roads might be icy and—" "I'll be fine, Thomas. Merry Christmas." The drive across London felt surreal. He left behind the polished streets of Knightsbridge, the exclusive shops and pristine townhouses. The neighborhoods gradually changed. Modest brick buildings appeared, small shops with handwritten signs, streets where people actually walked and talked to their neighbors. This was a London he rarely saw, the real London where ordinary people built ordinary lives. By the time he reached Hackney, light snow had begun to fall. Willow Street was narrow and lined with converted Victorian buildings. Number 12 had a red door, just like Lily said, and flower boxes in the windows that must have been lovely in summer. Now they were dusted with snow, waiting for spring. David sat in his car for a full minute, engine running, watching that red door. What was he doing here? This was madness. He should turn around, go back to his mansion, pretend this never happened. But then he saw movement through the window. A shadow passed by the curtains. Lily was in there, probably setting the table, probably wondering if he would actually come. The thought of her waiting, hoping, made something in his chest tighten. He turned off the engine and got out. The snow fell harder now, catching in his hair as he walked to the red door. His expensive shoes crunched on the pavement. He raised his hand to knock, then hesitated. This was the moment. Once he knocked, everything would change. He couldn't unknow what lay on the other side of this door. He knocked. Footsteps approached. The door opened, and there stood Lily in jeans and a simple green jumper, her hair down around her shoulders instead of pulled back like at work. She looked different here, more herself. Her eyes went wide when she saw him. "You came," she whispered, as if she couldn't quite believe it. "I did," David said, suddenly feeling awkward and out of place. "I hope I'm not too late." No, perfect timing actually." She stepped back to let him in, and he crossed the threshold into a different world. The flat was small, probably smaller than his walk-in closet back home. But it was warm. A tiny Christmas tree stood in the corner, decorated with ornaments that looked handmade, strings of popcorn, paper stars, a few glass balls that caught the light. The smell of roasted chicken and herbs filled the air, mixing with the faint scent of pine from the tree. Everything about this place was alive in a way his mansion never was. "Let me take your coat," Lily said, suddenly seeming nervous. "I'm sorry, it's not much. Nothing like what you're used to." "It's perfect," David said, and he meant it. She handed him a towel for his snow-dampened hair, and he found himself smiling at the simple gesture. When was the last time someone had done something so ordinary, so kind for him? Lily had set the small table with mismatched plates and a single candle in the center. She brought out the food, roasted chicken with potatoes, carrots glazed with honey, fresh bread that was still warm. It wasn't fancy. There was no presentation, no artful arrangement like the Michelin star restaurants he usually frequented. But as he took the first bite, David realized he had never tasted anything better. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Lily spoke. "I wasn't sure you'd come. I almost regretted asking. I know it was forward of me." "I'm glad you asked," David said honestly. "And I'm glad I came. Can I ask you something?" Lily set down her fork, looking at him with those thoughtful eyes. "What's it really like being David Coleman? Not the man in the newspapers, but the real person." Most people asked about his money, his success, his properties. No one ever asked about him, just him. "Lonely," he admitted, the word escaping before he could stop it. "It's lonelier than anyone would believe." Lily nodded slowly, no judgment in her expression. My grandmother used to say that people confuse having everything with being happy. She said the richest person she ever knew was our neighbor, who had almost nothing but shared everything. David felt something crack inside him, one of those carefully built walls coming down brick by brick. Tell me about your grandmother. So she did. Lily spoke about growing up in a small village in Ireland, about how her grandmother raised her after her parents died, about the little and they ran together and the guests who became like family. She spoke about loss and grief and finding the courage to start over in a new city where she knew no one. And David found himself talking too. About his parents, about the pressure of building an empire while barely an adult himself, about the walls he built and the price he paid for his success. He told her things he had never told anyone. The hours slipped away like minutes. The candle burned low. Outside, church bells rang at midnight, announcing Christmas Day. Lily raised her glass of wine. To new beginnings, she said softly. David clinked his glass against hers. To new beginnings. And in that small flat in Hackney, something impossible began to bloom. When the snow turned heavy outside, Lily insisted David stay rather than drive home in dangerous conditions. He tried to protest, but she was firm in that gentle way of hers. She made up the small sofa with blankets and pillows, apologizing for not having a proper guest room. It's more comfortable than you'd think, she promised. David didn't tell her that he would have slept on the floor and still felt more at peace than he had in years. There was something about this place, about her presence, that quieted the noise in his head. For the first time in decades, he wasn't thinking about the next deal, the next property, the next move in the endless chess game of business. He was just here, in this moment, and it was enough. He lay awake on that sofa for a long time, listening to the sounds of the flat. The old radiator clanking softly, the distant murmur of neighbors' televisions, the wind rattling the windows. These were the sounds of real life, the kind he had insulated himself from in his fortress of wealth. Christmas morning came gently. David woke to the smell of coffee and something sweet baking. He sat up, momentarily disoriented, before remembering where he was. Lily was in the tiny kitchen, humming to herself as she prepared breakfast. She had pulled her hair into a messy knot, and she was wearing an oversized jumper that made her look younger, more carefree. "Merry Christmas," she said when she noticed he was awake, that warm smile spreading across her face. "I hope you like French toast. It's the only thing I can make that doesn't come out burnt." They ate breakfast at the small table, and David realized he was smiling. Actually smiling, not the practiced expression he wore in meetings, but a real, genuine smile that reached his eyes. "What are your plans for today?" Lily asked, pouring more coffee. David had a sudden moment of panic. He should go back. He had responsibilities, appearances to maintain. But when he opened his mouth, different words came out. "I don't have any plans." "Then come for a walk with me," Lily said. "There's a park nearby, Richmond Park. It's beautiful on Christmas Day." They walked through Richmond Park as snow crunched beneath their feet. Families were everywhere, children pulling new sleds, parents pushing prams, couples holding hands. David felt exposed at first, worried someone might recognize him, might see him with his housekeeper, and start asking questions. But Lily walked beside him with such ease that his anxiety gradually melted away. She pointed out the deer that roamed the park, laughed when one came close enough to investigate them, bought them both hot chocolate from a vendor near the pond. They sat on a bench watching the world go by, and David felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt normal. Not like a billionaire or a businessman or a name in the papers. Just like a man spending Christmas with someone who made him feel seen. "My grandmother always said the best gift was time," Lily said softly, watching a family build a snowman nearby. "Not things, not money. Just being together." I didn't understand what she meant until after she was gone. David turned to look at her. Snow had caught in her hair, and her cheeks were pink from the cold. "I think I'm starting to understand," he said quietly. When she shivered, he draped his coat around her shoulders without thinking. The gesture felt natural, protective. And when she looked up at him with gratitude in her eyes, David felt his heart do something it hadn't done in a very long time. It opened. They returned to her flat as afternoon faded into evening. Lily made them tea and they talked for hours about everything and nothing. David found himself sharing memories he had locked away, stories about his parents, about the boy he used to be before responsibility and loneliness reshaped him. And Lily listened, really listened, in a way no one had in years. Finally, as the sky darkened, David knew he couldn't delay any longer. He had to go back to his world, to the mansion waiting cold and empty across the city. But the thought of leaving felt like tearing something precious. "Thank you," he said as he stood to go. "For yesterday, for today. For seeing me." Lily walked him to the door. "Will I see you again? I mean beyond work?" The question hung in the air between them. David knew what he should say. He should thank her for a lovely holiday and return to his carefully ordered life. Keep the boundaries clear. But standing there, with her looking up at him with hope and fear mingling in her eyes, he couldn't lie. "I'd like that," he said. "Very much." Her smile was like sunrise breaking through clouds. Over the following days, everything changed. David found himself looking for reasons to be in the kitchen when Lily was working. He asked her questions that had nothing to do with housekeeping, what books she was reading, what she missed about Ireland, what dreams she had for her future. And she answered him honestly, without guarding her words or trying to impress him. She left books she thought he might enjoy on the hall table. She made traditional Irish dishes and insisted he try them. She laughed at his dry humor in a way that made him want to be funnier, lighter, more like the man he might have been if life hadn't hardened him. It was unspoken, this thing growing between them. Neither dared name it. But it was there in every glance, every conversation that lasted longer than necessary, every moment when they found excuses to be near each other. David began delegating more at work, something he had never done before. He left the office earlier. He spent less time buried in contracts and more time discovering what it meant to actually live. And through it all, Lily was there. Not asking for anything, not wanting his money or his status. Just wanting him. The walls he had spent 20 years building were crumbling, and for the first time, David wasn't afraid of what lay beyond them. New Year's Eve arrived faster than David expected. He had always spent this night the same way, attending a charity gala at the Savoy, mingling with London's elite, making the right connections, maintaining his image. It was exhausting but necessary, or so he had always told himself. This year felt different. This year, he didn't want to go alone. He found Lily in the library, dusting the bookshelves with her usual care. His heart hammered as he approached her. What he was about to ask could change everything between them. It would make public something that had been private, sacred even. It would invite judgment and gossip and scrutiny. "Lily," he said, and she turned, that gentle smile already forming on her lips. "Yes, Mr. Coleman?" "David," he corrected softly. "Please call me David. We're past formalities now, don't you think?" Her smile widened. "David, then." He took a breath. "There's a gala tomorrow night at the Savoy. A New Year's Eve charity event. I attend every year. And this year, I'd like you to come with me. As my guest." Lily's eyes went wide. "David, I couldn't. That's your world. I wouldn't fit in. I don't even have anything appropriate to wear, and those people, they'll know I don't belong." "You belong anywhere you choose to stand," David said firmly. "And I want you there. Not as my housekeeper, but as the woman who showed me what Christmas could be. The woman who made me remember how to be human." She bit her lip, doubt clouding her features. "People will talk. They'll judge you for bringing someone like me." "Let them talk," David said, surprising himself with how much he meant it. "I've spent 20 years caring what people think. I'm tired, Lily. I'm tired of performing, of hiding, of being alone. If you're willing to take the risk, so am I." Lily studied his face for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. "Okay. Yes. I'll go with you." The next evening, David stood outside her building in Hackney, nervous as a teenager on a first date. When Lily emerged through the red door, his breath caught. She wore a simple navy dress that moved like water when she walked, her hair swept up, a nervous smile on her lips. "You look beautiful," he said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. "I feel terrified," she admitted with a shaky laugh. "So do I," David said honestly. "But we'll be terrified together." The Savoy ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and champagne flutes. Men in tuxedos and women in designer gowns clustered in groups, their laughter echoing off marble columns. As David entered with Lily on his arm, conversations faltered. Heads turned. Whispers began. He felt Lily's hand tremble slightly in his, though she kept her chin high. Pride surged through him at her courage. "David, darling." A woman in diamonds swept toward them, her eyes sharp with curiosity. "How lovely to see you. And who is this?" "This is Lily Hart," David said clearly. "Lily, this is Catherine Wembley. She chairs the Children's Hospital Foundation." "How do you two know each other?" Catherine asked with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Before David could answer, Lily spoke. I work for David. Or I did. We met through his home. Catherine's eyebrows lifted almost imperceptibly. How interesting. Throughout the night, the questions came in different forms, but always with the same underlying judgment. Who was this unknown woman on David Coleman's arm? Why would someone of his stature bring a nobody to the most exclusive event of the year? The whispers followed them like shadows. But something amazing happened. Lily didn't shrink. When a pompous banker made a condescending remark about her accent, she responded with grace and wit. When a society woman asked where she bought her quaint dress, Lily smiled and said it was from a small shop in Hackney and she loved supporting local businesses. Each time, David fell a little more in love with her strength. As midnight approached, David led Lily out to the terrace overlooking the Thames. The cold air was a relief after the suffocating atmosphere inside. The city spread before them, lights twinkling like earthbound stars. I'm sorry, David said quietly. I didn't realize how cruel people could be. They're not cruel, Lily said, leaning against the railing. They're just protective of their world. I am an outsider. They're not wrong about that. You're not an outsider to me. David turned to face her fully. Lily, I need to tell you something. These past few weeks, you've changed my life. You've shown me that everything I thought mattered, the money, the status, the empire, none of it means anything without real connection. Without someone to share it with. The countdown began inside. 10, 9, 8. I'm falling in love with you, David said, his voice raw with emotion. I know it's complicated. I know people will judge. But I don't care anymore. You make me want to be better, to be real, to tear down every wall I've built. 7, 6, 5. Lily's eyes glistened with tears. I'm falling in love with you too. I have been since that first Christmas Eve when you walked through my door looking lost and lonely and so desperate to be seen. For 3, 2. Then be with me, David whispered. Really with me. Not as my employee, but as my equal. As my partner. As the woman who saved me from a life of isolation. 1. Fireworks exploded over the Thames, painting the sky in brilliant colors. David cupped Lily's face in his hands and kissed her, tender and deep and full of promise. She wrapped her arms around his neck, kissing him back with everything she felt. The world fell away. There was no gala, no judging crowd, no difference in their backgrounds. There was only this moment, this connection, this love that had grown from a simple Christmas invitation into something that would change both their lives forever. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Lily laughed through her tears. What happens now? Now, David said, resting his forehead against hers. We figure it out together. The days after New Year's Eve were complicated. The gossip columns picked up the story quickly. Property tycoon David Coleman spotted with mystery woman, the headlines read. Some articles were kind, others less so. A few dug into Lily's background, questioning her motives, suggesting she was after his fortune. David wanted to sue every publication that printed lies about her. But Lily stopped him with a gentle hand on his arm. Let them talk, she said. People who matter will see the truth. The rest doesn't concern us. Her grace humbled him. But one conversation needed to happen, and they both knew it. Lily couldn't remain his employee. What was growing between them was too real, too important to be tainted by a power imbalance. So on a gray January morning, they sat down together in his study. I'll find you another position if you'd like, David said carefully. I have connections across London. I can make introductions, help you find something that matches your talents. I'd appreciate the introductions, Lily said. But not the job itself. I need to find my own way, David. If this is going to work between us, I need to stand on my own feet. He loved her even more for saying it. So many people in his life wanted his money, his influence, his ability to open doors. Lily only wanted his support, not his shortcuts. Within 2 weeks, she had found a position managing a small boutique hotel in Notting Hill. The owners were charmed by her warmth and her experience helping run her grandmother's inn. She gave her notice at David's mansion, and they agreed to take time to let their relationship grow naturally, without the complication of employer and employee. The transition was strange at first. David had grown used to seeing Lily in his home every day. Now he had to call her, ask her to dinner, court her properly. It felt awkward and wonderful and terrifying all at once. They went on real dates. He took her to the theater, and she held his hand during the emotional scenes. She took him to a tiny Irish pub in Camden where live music played and strangers danced together like family. They walked through museums and argued playfully about art. They cooked dinner in her small flat, laughing when the smoke alarm went off because David had never actually cooked anything in his life. Slowly, carefully, they built something real. Something equal. Something that wasn't based on wealth or position, but on genuine understanding and respect. Spring came to London, and with it, a quiet contentment David had never known. He found himself spending more time at Lily's flat than at his mansion. The small space, with its mismatched furniture and cramped kitchen, felt more like home than his Knightsbridge estate ever had. One evening in April, as they sat together on her small sofa sharing takeaway curry, Lily said something that stopped him cold. "I've been thinking," she said carefully, "about your house." "What about it?" "It's beautiful, but it's so empty, David. All those rooms and no life in them. Have you ever thought about what you really want it to be?" David set down his food, considering. "I bought it because I thought it was what successful people did. The biggest house, the best address. But you're right. It's never felt like home. What if you made it one?" Lily suggested. "Not a showpiece, but a real home. Maybe you could host people there, friends, family, charity events that actually matter. Or maybe you could do something entirely different with it. The point is, it should reflect who you are, not who you think you're supposed to be." Her words planted a seed. Over the following weeks, David thought about what home really meant. It wasn't about square footage or prestigious addresses. It was about warmth, connection, purpose. The things Lily had shown him that first Christmas Eve. He made a decision that shocked his business partner James. He put the Knightsbridge mansion on the market and used the funds to establish a foundation supporting housing for young people transitioning out of foster care. Kids who, like him, had lost their parents and needed a chance to build their own lives. As for himself, he bought a townhouse in Notting Hill, not far from the hotel where Lily worked. It was smaller, warmer, the kind of place where you could actually live rather than just exist. He filled it with comfortable furniture, books that he actually wanted to read, art that meant something to him personally. And he asked Lily to help him make it a home. She moved in that summer, bringing her mismatched ornaments, her grandmother's recipes, and the warmth that had first drawn him to her little flat in Hackney. They painted the kitchen together, argued about where to hang pictures, adopted a scruffy rescue dog that Lily named Murphy and who followed David everywhere like a shadow. On Christmas Eve, exactly 1 year after their first dinner together, David and Lily stood in their kitchen preparing the meal together. Murphy slept in his bed by the radiator. Soft music played from the speaker. Snow fell gently outside the window. "Do you remember last year?" Lily asked, chopping vegetables. "Every moment," David said, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. "I remember a woman brave enough to invite a lonely billionaire to her home. I remember feeling seen for the first time in 20 years. I remember falling in love." Lily turned in his arms, her eyes shining. "I remember a man brave enough to walk through my door. To let his walls come down. To choose love over loneliness. Best decision I ever made," David whispered. They kissed softly, the timer beeping in the background, Murphy starting to snore, the world outside continuing its busy rush toward Christmas. But inside this home they had built together, there was only warmth, only love, only the quiet joy of two people who had found each other in the most unexpected way. David Coleman had spent 20 years building an empire of glass and steel. But in the end, the only thing worth building was this: a life filled with love, a home filled with laughter, and a future shared with someone who saw him not as a billionaire or a tycoon or a name in the papers, but simply as David. Just David. And that was more than enough. The end. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is open our hearts to someone unexpected. Sometimes home isn't a place at all, but a person who sees us for who we truly are. And sometimes, one simple invitation on a lonely Christmas Eve can change absolutely everything.